I don't know who we're waiting for, if it's me or you, but we're live, baby.
We are live. Yeah,
I thought you were just like a frozen image.
I kind of was. Yeah, I often sit and just stare into space for long periods of time, but not today. I feel great today.
It's a great day.
It's a great day, especially for like any Husky fan. Man, it
Yes.
is. It is. I don't think you could ask for anything better. I feel like I've lost years off my life in the past couple weeks, especially yesterday. I literally, man, I like woke up in the middle of the night last night and my body physically hurt. Like
Really?
it actually hurt. I was like, this can't be good, man.
So I
I'm
thought
still I'm too young for these issues.
you were traveling to this game also. Was that ever the plan, or did I just have it completely wrong?
No, we kind of for a moment indulged the idea of going to New Orleans, but man, as it's been well publicized, the cost of going to New Orleans was prohibitive at
Gotcha.
best. Yeah, it was tough. So I am going to the national championship though, which is going to be awesome. Can't wait. At the same time, I don't begrudge anybody who can't go. It's also very expensive. The nice thing for us is we kind of had this plan a month ago to book travel and tickets and everything for Houston before anyone even thought that far ahead. So
Yeah.
it wasn't very expensive for us. I see that it's gone way up in the past 24 hours.
Yes.
So
I saw
that's
at one point like lowest tickets available were like $2,800, which I assume probably was when Texas was going to be, when people thought Texas might be part of the national championship game, and then
yeah. Well,
it's
I
probably
think
harder to sell those tickets to Washington fans.
yeah, it'll be interesting to see how things change over the next couple of days because obviously Washington, Michigan is a lot more travel involved than Texas and Alabama would have been. Certainly, I'm sure the Houston market would have appreciated having those two teams from the South there because it would have just brought in a lot of people.
Yeah.
But you know what? Fuck them.
Yeah.
I'm glad we're going.
Also, Georgia fucked it up for everybody because it should have been a Michigan-Washington Rose Bowl to be the last like Pac-12 Big Ten Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
And so fuck them already. Like
Yeah,
we
that's true,
lost out
man.
on poetry.
I was watching the Iron Bowl when Alabama played Auburn and kind of upset them at the end. It's not really an upset, obviously. Auburn was not very good this year,
Sure.
but Auburn had the game in hand, and Alabama took it away from them and really screwed up the entire football playoff rankings. But that's okay because it worked out for the best. Personally, I'm very happy that Washington gets to play Michigan. That might be sacrilege in a way, but I just didn't want to play Alabama.
Dude, I totally agree. I totally agree.
Yeah.
First off, I want to address this because we're if you're listening to this days later, we're live for the first time ever doing this. And there's already one question poured in. They're pouring in, Alex. The comments and questions are pouring in.
Perfect.
And but we'll get to those. This is going to be the fun part, is having people interact in real time instead of putting the podcast out like 24 full hours after we recorded it. And so please go to YouTube and Facebook. I think those are I don't think you can do it on Twitter. There's a lot of people that are following Alex on Twitter. Follow the link through maybe my Twitter account to YouTube, and you can comment on there, chat on there. Anyway,
yeah, we can talk. Obviously, we got a lot to talk about with
yes,
regards to the Huskies and other things too, which we'll get to. If you're listening to this, I don't know what happens. You must have gotten lost. There's like so many better people you could listen to.
How dare you?
Yeah, it's one of our.
By the way, Doug Scott, what an asshole. Mutual friend Doug Scott. Did I already miss the tech issue segment? That's what
It's
a bastard.
upcoming. It's coming. It'll happen.
We actually had a conversation about this, that if we go live, we can't have tech issues. And I made a point that I think is on my feet one of the best points I've ever made, which is no tech issue we have had has lasted longer than commercials on terrestrial radio. So
That's true.
We're
Yeah.
doing okay.
We'll maybe one day we'll work in some live reads. That'd be fun.
Oh, that'd be sweet.
The thing about radio, I listen to a lot of sports radio. Most of the ads are for just the weirdest products. It's never like, it's like what Twitter has become with ads, where every time you're scrolling through Twitter, you're like, man, these are some weird ads. Like these are like knockoff vibrators. These aren't even the real thing.
Did you see Jason Whitlock cell phone himself, by the way?
Yes, yeah, I saw that.
Jason
Oh my
Whitlock
god.
posts, why is this ad showing up on my whatever it was, like ESPN NFL standings? And it's just a thing about, it's like, I don't even understand what the ad was for, to be honest with you, which means that his algorithm, because what he didn't realize and what some people may not realize is that Google AdSense is just algorithm based. So you get
Yeah.
ads that meet your like search criteria. I don't know if ESPN's using Google AdSense. It wouldn't surprise me if they are, but either way, they're using some sort of algorithmic ad company, which means Jason Whitlock's search history is what led to this, which was hilarious. And I got the news from the great Katie Nolan, who's a friend of comedy, so I will always forever be on her side of an argument that she has with a guy like Jason Whitlock.
Yeah, it was like I would call it like a raunchy greeting card is what it looked like. And
Yeah.
it was something along the lines of like spending the new year by being inside of you or something like that. It's like Jesus. It's like I mean, look, I think a lot of us have seen some weird ads. Let's not hide from our pasts.
Oh
But
no.
that I've never seen anything like that. That's for
I get
sure.
a thing I get a thing pitched to me on Instagram every now and then, which by the way, the other thing that I'm really bad at is saying I got to start saying the shows that I'm doing coming up at the beginning of the show instead of the last 45 seconds. But I get a thing on Instagram that looks like a fleshlight with like spikes pointing inwards, and I'm like, they say it's for, I don't know, dogs or something like that, but I think they know something about me that I don't know.
It's that sounds terrible.
It
In
does sound bad.
everything you just said in the last 30 seconds, it's terrifying. And yeah, it's not great. Not great. But yeah, this is, I mean, we get together like this every week pretty much, and just kind of talk about sports and other things. And we'll uh we'll try to be more professional today, I guess. I don't know.
My
Because since we're live for the first
I don't
time.
know if, I mean, this, I was thinking about this too, which is the tough part about going live is that you don't get to edit. But then I think about how much I actually edit out of this podcast. It's not
Not
that
much.
much, not
No.
that much less editing.
The people
Uh
that actually, I feel like the regular listeners who make it all the way to the end of the podcast have heard some weird things. Like, there's no doubt about that, because I've listened back a couple times just to like see. For me, it's purely selfish and ego driven. I want to
of
hear my own
course.
voice as much as possible,
I've
but
listened back to
also,
every episode.
but yeah, but also, I like to hear how good or bad the sound quality is. Everybody knows that's the big thing. It's like, if your sound quality is bad, then you might
the
as well just stop
the
doing this.
content could suck, but if it sounds like we're on NPR, then we're good.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's true. So yeah, we have a lot to talk about today. Obviously, national championship, Huskies. You have a few other topics for us. I can't remember what they are. Before we set the topics, though, I was thinking about this because we always do this. If you listen to this at any point in the past, you know that we wait until the last like 30 seconds for you to promote any shows you have
Yeah,
upcoming. And it's a complete waste because
it's a
no one ever
total
makes it
waste.
that far. We haven't seen the numbers on how far people make it. It's not like your teams meetings at work where you can see like when everyone left, when everyone left the meeting. We don't
The
have
the
that kind of
minutes of the
benefit.
call are just me and you.
Yeah,
So
yeah. We actually will get to figure out like where we're all at in this process.
sure.
And thank you for the comment about the hat.
Yeah.
Simply
Bow down.
Seattle. We don't have, I don't have any kind of
We got to
deals
get
with
a
them or
Simply
anything.
Seattle
But yeah, it seems
promo
like
code.
everyone gets a promo code, but Simply Seattle sells this hat. So
Get out of Simply Seattle. Let the people support us.
yeah, they're great. They do a great job. A lot of UW custom stuff, which is pretty cool. So yeah, but promote your shows because
Yeah.
we don't want to save that till the end. You've got a lot of
Yeah.
stuff coming up.
So this week, I will be at Tacoma Comedy Club, the Sixth and Proctor location, featuring for Gabriel Rutledge, who is the best comic in the Pacific Northwest. The 11th, I'll be at the big Tacoma Comedy Club hosting for my favorite comic in the world, Joe List, and then I'll be with radio legend Jubal Fresh at the big or at Laughs in Seattle, and then the big one for me that's coming up that I'll keep talking about for a long time is March 15th and 16th. I'm headlining Tacoma Comedy Club, Sixth and Proctor Club, and I'm going to put together a promotional video about it. But let's just say there's something special about that weekend. So March 15th and 16th, come out Tacoma Comedy Club, Sixth and Proctor website. We'll keep promoting future dates later on as they get closer, but for now, those are the ones that I want to talk about. Oh, also, by the way, Seattle fans will be into this. Sarah Colonna and I will be making our second appearance together. The first one was at Tacoma Comedy Club. This time at Spokane Comedy Club the first weekend of February.
Spokane, that's exotic.
Exotic locations.
Exotic.
I got to pick up my phone because I knocked it off my desk. I'm sorry.
Okay, well that's fine. Now it's just your green.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
You got a lot of stuff coming up.
Yeah.
I feel like if anybody who actually listens to this show that we do comes up to you at one of your shows.
Oh shit! Frank Castro pointed out. Hold on. I fucked up. We have a show. He's the man because he's got to be frustrated. I'm also at so Bickerson's Brewhouse, January 20th. Great lineup, by the way. Amanda Arnold and Tanner Torkelson. That's a show that I produce at Bickerson's Brewhouse with our pal Frank Castro, Jr. I'm finding out just now. I didn't realize he was a junior.
Just like Michael Penix. Yeah, he's a junior.
And that same day, if you want to make this, well, I'm not going to promote the other thing because I'm not going to be there, but I'll let Frank have his moment right now because we've had good success at Bickerson's Brewhouse, and I don't want to break the streak. But I'm not going to be there. It'll be a guest host, and they make some great beer, by the way. If you're, and they have a location in Ballard also. If you're looking to buy beer directly from the source, which, by the way, that's how they make their most money. I also think that I have it's possible. Oh, I have a nice picture from the Seahawks game I went to that we'll talk about later that just came into my phone. So, anyways, we can move on from my dates. Bickerson's Brewhouse, I do that every month, by the way.
Yeah, Bickerson's is great. I was hanging out with Frank last night when we were watching the game together for a little bit, and he brought me some of their beer, which was very nice of him. Like you said, very good beer.
Yeah, good place and Alex is a connoisseur too, so that's
yeah. I generally don't drink a lot of beer.
Sure.
So, if I said it's okay, then I don't know. My taste is terrible. I'm the type of person that if I were to go wine tasting, it would all taste like wine. That's
if we ever revive the in-person podcast, we have to start the IPA testing phase of the podcast where we find an IPA. We go until we find an IPA that you love. That's what I say.
I don't think I'll ever love one, but tolerate is probably a better word. I would tolerate some. No, you know what I was going to say a minute ago?
Mike Hansen is a piece of shit. By the way, he's a comic who's hosting for Gabriel Welch this weekend. The show is going to be Mike Hansen's fatter than me, and then I'm fatter than Gabe. So it's like Russian nesting dolls of fat bearded white guys.
The important thing about a beard, the nice thing about the beard trend being so popular in the last decade is that it hides the fact that we're all missing our necks or have extra chins. That's the only reason you really grow a beard. But I was going to say, if anyone actually listens to this show and comes to one of your shows, I feel like they should mention that to you, and then
absolutely,
you should have to like buy them a beer or something.
I thought you were going to try to get a commission for yourself.
No, I don't care about that. There's not going to be enough beer. It's going to be like you'll buy like 2 beers. So I think that's a reasonable payment. Plus,
hey, can I tell you a comedy story? So, by the way, we really teased the Huskies thing, and now we're just going every other direction. But the last show of 2023 that I did was on December 28th at Side Hustle Brewing, and it's the first show that I've self-produced where I'm headlining it and sold it out. It felt like a big accomplishment, a good way to close out. I thought a good way to close out 2023. And then I went up and I have some new material that is like a little bit of a delicate topic, and it like really requires appropriate wording. And not only did I not get the wording right, but I missed the last like half of the joke and ruined the last, like not ruined, I got him back eventually, but ruined like 20 of the next 30 minutes that I did to close out 2023.
That's a really great endorsement after just promoting all your shows.
Well, you can come see. It's a little bit of a high wire act that could go horribly at some point. That's part of the fun of comedy, I suppose.
Yeah. Can I just mention really quick before we get into all our topics? Like,
sure.
Typically when we do this, it's just like a screen that's you and me, and there's nothing else going on. But I have ADD, and right now it's really distracting me.
I think you can hide this for yourself, by the way. I think you can make it so I'm the one dealing with it.
That's true. Actually, that's probably a good idea. We'll work on that for next time. Okay,
Okay.
as it is, as it
All
is.
right.
So what else do we have to talk about? Obviously, the big topic, the Huskies. But
Yeah,
where
so
do we go from
we
there?
missed last week the Russell Wilson benching, which is a topic that's perfect for this podcast, and I have a million opinions on the future of Russell Wilson, the way that this went down. The Panthers owner threw a beer or a drink on some fans from his suite, and I recently sat in a Seahawks suite. I'm a suite man now. I have a lot of. I
Wow.
might be on the owner's side on this one now that I'm a suite guy. Now that I'm one of the guys that sits in a suite, and then the Seahawks had a pretty rough loss, and we're going to talk about their playoff chances, and maybe we'll think of something else because I feel like there's another topic that we're completely ignoring. But anyway, back to the Huskies. I think.
We do have to get to the Huskies, man. It is. I mean, you're a Husky fan too. We're obviously
Yes.
both Husky fans. I'll just start by saying I the years I went to UW, they were terrible.
Mm-hmm.
The Husky football team and the time I was at UW never made a bowl game. I went in there in 2003, the year before they made a bowl, and they didn't get back until 2010 after I had recently graduated. Let's be honest, it wasn't that long. I spent 6 years doing undergrad, but my friends and I have gone to bowl games starting in 2010 together. It was like a thing that we did every year, pretty much. Obviously, COVID kind of threw a wrench in our plans for and our streak of these bowl games, but man, it's one of those things where the idea of a national championship like never ever crossed my mind, especially not 10 or 15 years ago when this
Sure.
program was trying to get right and get back on track. And now they're going to go there, which is just insane to me. It's so in college football, it's so hard, man. Like it's so subjective just to even be considered among the elite group to have a shot at a national championship and then to actually win the games necessary to get there against great opponents with everything that can go wrong in a football season, injuries and all of that. Um, so man, it's like the greatest feeling, man. I didn't even feel this way when the Seahawks won the Super Bowl. It
That's
feels better
interesting.
than that. Yeah, it feels better. But so I'm curious to hear how you feel about it.
Yeah. So I mean, I think definitely. For me, the Seahawks were that was a bigger deal. Also, by the way, the Seahawks, it's like this is more to me like when they went in 2005 than when they won it because they haven't won it yet. If they win it, maybe I'll feel a little bit differently. I'll be curious. I had some argument online last night about Washington and Seattle not caring about this team at all, and I just don't think that's true. That person had been in Seattle on January 1st, on New Year's Day, which I don't think is a day to judge sports fandom, by the way, because not enough people were talking about it that day is not enough reason to say that the city doesn't care about the Huskies. But for me, I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of like to imagine where they were, because I grew up like my earliest memories of the Huskies are like Corey Dillon and the teams like Napoleon Kaufman, like those like early 90s to mid 90s teams. Those are my first memories of really caring about the Huskies. And they were like just bowl eligible every year. Not necessarily obviously they had the early 90s team. I was pretty young. I was like 5. I don't remember when they were national champions. I check in like Lambright era. I have no memories of Don
Yeah.
James.
Yeah,
Uh
I think that's for most people in our age group, that's probably where your memories start to form if you
right.
grew up as a Husky fan. I mean, I was like 7 years old when
Yeah.
they won the national championship, so I don't really have any recollection of that. I don't think a lot of I mean, and I'm 39 now, so it's like you'd have to be around 50 to at least
Sure.
50 to like really remember the national championship
Yeah, you
and
were
then
like just out of high school then probably if you were 50. If you're 50 right now, you were just
right.
out of high school.
Right. And even then, I mean, you think back to any of us can think back to when we were teenagers. Like,
Right.
you have kind of a different appreciation for memories like that at that age than you do when you become an adult, when you've kind of grown into that time of your life when you can really like experience those moments and like cherish them for what they are.
Yeah.
And so it's different, man. It's like it's a really cool thing to have happen. I just never ever thought we would get back here,
Right.
especially as they expand to 12 teams in the future. certainly that opens up the door for being able to, maybe make a run at future championships again. But I just didn't think under the 14 playoff it was going to be super easy. And I was at the championship or the college football playoff in 2016, and it just didn't feel like it feels now. Like it
Sure.
just,
Well, part of the reason was they played Alabama and got the doors blown off of them. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think anyone ever felt like that game. I honestly didn't even feel like this was a realistic, like a realistic hope until they went up 7-0 on Texas. And
yeah,
there
yeah,
were, I mean, I know that the stats aren't going to bear this out necessarily, but there was like there was a scenario where this game ends up being like a 4-score blowout if Jeremy Bernard doesn't drop the punt, and if when they go for it on 4th and 1, I think maybe a drive or two later, they don't get it on like what I would call like a somewhat questionable showing your hand and then running the play everyone expects. It's very frustrating as a fan who knows nothing about real life play calling to see this like running back direct snap is a very obvious run play,
yeah.
and it just seemed like an uninspired 4th down call.
Well, for as like creative as their play calling typically is and has been all year,
Right.
they played it pretty straight
Yeah.
yesterday against Texas, which was kind of surprising. I would imagine they probably have a lot in the bag to showcase for the championship because they
Sure.
really didn't show a lot of like trickery in that game. And you're right. I mean, it felt at times like the Huskies could have started to run away with the game. I think the punt return was really like the muff punt return was really the turning point where if they field that punt or just fair catch it and go down and score, all of a sudden they're up by 2 touchdowns going into the half. It really makes things interesting coming out of
Yeah.
halftime. But instead, it's a tie game, and it was close the whole way. I mean, that this year's Huskies, man, they just always find a way to make every game close.
Yeah. And
It's
they're
like
frustrating in that way. The same way
it
like
is, yeah,
the 2000s or whatever I don't even know what you call that era, the teens. That era of Seahawks, like you
yeah.
always were like they had a chance to win every game. There was always hope. They were
Yeah.
rarely out of games, but like can you just get some separation in the 3rd quarter so I can breathe for an hour? Jesus.
It's wild, man. Having gone through the Seahawks era, and now this with the Huskies, it's just like it takes a lot out of you. It really does. But
Yes.
it makes every victory is like so it feels so much better because it just doesn't feel like you had any business being there at certain points in the game. It just and especially for me yesterday, I mean, I went into that whole game thinking, just expecting the worst and hoping for the best,
Yeah.
knowing that we had a trip lined up to the national championship after this. Not only am I like worried about my team and what could happen there, but it's like this is the difference in me like getting a few days off next week and having to cancel some flights and cancel a hotel room if they
Sell
lose. So
some tickets.
I was well. The nice thing about the tickets is they're only allotted to you once the team actually
Oh,
wins because
got
we
you.
got them
Okay.
through the school.
Nice.
But it was just one of those things where I was like preparing myself mentally for a very depressing Tuesday, and instead, it's the exact opposite. That
Well, and
it's like
so
the greatest feeling in the world.
I think I remember very specifically a tweet you made that was like a little bit of what turned out to be an early victory lap. But I'm going to talk about this is my buddy Phil Klingler. We have a bunch of comics. It's going to get bad if it's only comics commenting. By the way, comics and comedy adjacent people. Brian Dennis has a normal good job, but he's also a security guard at the comedy club that wrecks me every time I see him. So
That's good. That's good. You need a little bit of that.
but so they go, by the way, I want to say this. So they have the unfortunate injury um on the 3rd down play at the end, because there's some frustrating stuff all through, some frustrating clock management, I think, at every stage. I think
Yeah.
they weren't like, I don't think they were pulling out all the stops trick wise, but they started to get like a little more finesse. It felt like early in the game, like every time the ball went up, Michael Penix put a ball in the air, it was coming into somebody's hands. Like
Yeah.
he was like 11 of 11 at one point in the second half, I believe. But it wasn't like, whenever you see a guy go 11 of 11, it's like a guy who's dinking and dunking, throwing screens and check downs and stuff like that. And he was like really putting the ball downfield and
Oh, it was
putting
automatic.
perfect
It
passes.
was automatic. It was like video game production from him. Every time he dropped back to pass, it was like a guaranteed completion, and almost every time it was for a first down because, yeah, like you said, it wasn't dink and dunk. Everything was a deep shot or at least 10 yards or more, and
Yeah.
that's what really makes him so special. Is, down the stretch of the regular season, everyone saw Penix struggle a little bit. I mean, that was obvious to people. He just didn't look the same. He likely had an injury. There were all sorts of things that were kind of coming together to create a lesser version of Penix than what we've seen recently. And to see him rebound in the Pac-12 championship and then yesterday in the Sugar Bowl, it was impressive, man, because when he's at his best, like he was yesterday, there's just no other quarterback in college football that can do the things that he could do. And he just took control of that game. I mean,
Hmm.
the running game was good at times, but we've seen the running game for the Huskies explode in games, and it really didn't do that as much yesterday. So, the best player on the field stepped up when he had to and carried his team. And I mean, like you said, it is unfortunate that the Huskies, I guess, didn't take a knee at the end of the game. I understand why they didn't.
Sure.
Running a play and getting a first down would have ended the game. So I understand why they would do that. But taking a knee certainly would have been a little bit more prudent in that it would have taken the clock down to what would seem like an almost unmanageable situation for Texas. But anytime you can secure a win versus just get it close, you're going to try to secure it. And they tried to put the ball in their most sure-handed running back's hands, and instead he gets injured, which is sucks. It sucks
Hmm.
going into a championship, and it doesn't seem like he'll be able to go next week, although they haven't said that either way yet. But if he can't
He's
go, I
been
mean,
ailing for months though. I
yeah,
mean,
he's had a foot injury most of the season. Um, it's weird though because I don't feel like because Penix is so good and so much better than like everybody else on the field, and because those receivers are so talented that the Huskies have, it doesn't feel like super crippling to not have your starting running back. Obviously, you want everyone to be 100%, but
sure.
it doesn't feel like that is going to be a death sentence for the Huskies going into a championship game. It still feels like they can win.
So I think that probably they're like, if you want to just go on like win probability, I think the difference between, because it's not just the injury, which by the way, now that the Huskies won and it doesn't sound like sour grapes, that's a horrible rule. That if a player gets injured on the offense, that stops the clock. It's bad luck. It penalizes a genuine injury. It isn't the spirit of that rule. The spirit of that rule is to not allow defensive, well, what is the spirit of the rule? That it's certainly not the spirit of the rule, but then you have an option for a 10-second runoff if you want it, if you're the opposing team. Obviously Texas wasn't going to take that, but it's I don't know. It's not a good rule. I think that they should not penalize teams that are running down the clock with that rule. That being said, with that rule in place, I think you're probably like a 99% win probability to like a 99.5% win probability. It's not just an injury that could stop the clock. Holding penalty, any kind of blocking penalty, like there's a
Yeah.
bunch of stuff that can stop the clock, that running a play that has real life action, some percentage of your plays are going to have penalties.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, it was probably like a 99% win probability when they gave
no,
Texas
that's
the
what I
ball
mean.
back.
That's
Yeah,
what I
I
mean.
mean, even still, it certainly didn't feel like that's just seconds later. Giving the ball back
Yeah.
to Texas with about 50 seconds left on the clock.
Well, then you get the
Uh,
penalty on the punt, of course, and then a couple big
yeah,
shots. I mean, in college football, where they're stopping at every first down, it feels like 45 seconds is an eternity. And then, I mean, it
yeah.
seemed like at every that last sequence, the last four downs. I mean, I think the Huskies called one timeout in there, but and then there was a challenge. Like it felt like it lasted an hour.
Everything that happened in the last 50 seconds, anything that could have gone wrong, went wrong except
Yeah,
for the end result. But everything else went wrong. It was just like a complete meltdown. And in the moment, I was talking with some other friends, and we kind of all agreed it would be the greatest collapse in Seattle sports history. Like technically, the Seahawks Super Bowl wasn't a collapse. They were trying to win the game. They were losing. They were trying to win, and then they
yeah,
didn't do it. So you could argue if that's a collapse or not. But this would certainly have been a collapse. And it was one of those things where it was like they were up by 6. So it's like obviously Texas still has to nail the extra point, but that's almost always a given in that situation. If they score a touchdown, you're probably losing the game by 1. And
yeah,
when Texas drove down the field, the first they get the ball back with like 50 seconds left. Their quarterback Quinn Ewers makes a couple passes that were just like so errant that were like nowhere near their receivers that I was like, this is not going to be an issue. We're gonna get a 3 and out. Or 4 and out, I guess in this case. Game's gonna be over. And then they just, I think the one thing that a lot of teams do now in football, whether it's the NFL or college, is in those late game situations, you just take a deep shot because it's like 50-50 whether they're going to call pass interference. Like you might catch the ball, which is
Hmm.
great, but at the very least, there's a pretty good chance you're going to get a PI called and then get a first down out of that regardless, and at least keep things moving. So teams are kind of like used to that now. And so they take their deep shot, they actually get the ball down the field, and they get to like the 15-yard line with 15 seconds left. And I said, in that moment, they're going to get 4 shots at the
Yeah.
end zone from here. And they did. They got exactly 4 shots. The last one coming with 1 second left on the clock. And, the Husky defense showed up when it mattered. I know earlier in the year, man, a lot was being said about the Husky defense and how it wasn't maybe up to snuff, especially in the secondary. But the second half of this season, they've been just as good as the offense at times. They've been so good. And in that moment, they showed up when they had to.
Do you think? I mean, so I have a couple of friends who are Texas fans, and there was a penalty discrepancy. By the way, it wasn't as close as it was after that kick catch interference. Was not as close as one friend said. There was an uncalled pass interference on the final play, which I disagree with. By the way, watching that play a million times, if you call pass interference on that last play, that's a robbery of the
Yeah.
of football fans, in my opinion.
I mean, in that situation, I mean, it's like in a basketball game when a ref blows their whistle as time's expiring on a shot. It's like you're going to
Right.
have to commit felony assault to get a flag in that situation. And rightfully so. I mean, I know there's a lot of people who are letter of the law people, but when you're on the other side of it, it just feels like a great moment has been stolen from you. I thought in
Sure.
general, I know like officiating is the subject of every single game, no matter which side you're on. I thought in general that game was pretty well officiated last night. It felt like the game itself stood out. And I mean, we've all been a part of games where it becomes a ref show, especially on some of these big stages.
For sure.
And it didn't feel like that yesterday. It felt like both teams had a legit shot. I'm sure there's probably some Texas fans out there that feel like they got robbed in certain situations, but I think objectively, any fan could look at that game and think that it went pretty fairly in both directions because you just didn't notice the officials that much, which is the hallmark of good officiating. Is that
Hmm.
if you don't feel like they stood out, then things probably went okay.
Yeah, that's actually basically my exact opinion. Is there's like maybe a couple complaints I would have had. I was less sure of the catch, the running back catch at the end than apparently all of Twitter was, but
Yeah.
I other than that, like yeah, I do feel like it was pretty well officiated. I did see this. So the post game festivities were. I get really bored really quick. I don't know what it is. I watched the dude mispronounce Kalen DeBoer's name, and I was like, okay, well this is enough. I'll watch a little bit of Michael Penix, and then I'm out. I can't sit and like I feel like I'm leaving the stadium. Like I'm not gonna sit and watch this for 45 minutes. But I did. I'm gonna pull up the. I played my hand a little earlier. There was this exchange, and tell me if you can't hear this because some. Oh, hold on, yeah, of course you can. Let's. Doug Scott wanted the technical difficulty segment. We gave it to him. Hold on. Uh,
I didn't see this. So what is this UW players getting yelling at Texas fans or Texas fans
yes.
yelling at UW players? Okay.
It was both. It was
Yeah.
UW players yelling at Texas fans, and then a Texas fan yelling like "Don't forget me" or "Remember me" or something like that. And I guess like it became a story. It became a thing that like a rallying cry for Washington fans. And I'm just like, what do you want college football to be? If the fans can't yell at the opposing players, and in this
Yeah.
case, yeah, he's an old white guy yelling at young black dudes. I understand how like optically that's bad in 2024, I guess. This is what sports are. Is I yell at the opposing players.
Yeah.
I'm gonna boo them. I'm not gonna throw batteries at them or anything like that. But of course you're
Yeah.
gonna yell
Yeah.
at these guys.
I think especially with college sports, there's just so much of this element of everyone has to be classy. I saw people posting, yeah,
Stinks.
that I understand. I saw people posting about Husky fans posting after the game yesterday about how classy some of the Texas fans were, and there was apparently one Texas fan who just like stood at the exit and shook hands with all the Husky
Oh,
fans
what
and
a
told them great,
loser.
yeah, told them
Fuck that
great,
guy. I
Called them
hate
great
that
game
guy.
and good luck in the championship. And it's like, it's too much, man. Like, I think everybody has in
Go
emotional,
home. You
yeah,
have a family.
he probably doesn't have a family. Let's be honest. Nobody loves this man. He was looking for friends. But in these emotional games like this, I think every reaction is valid. I mean, obviously, some people are assholes and will react much worse than others, but like, it's valid if you're invested in your team at a moment like that where it's like the one of the biggest games. You're gonna react how you react, and it's a valid enough reaction, however you choose to do it. I mean, I was as excited yesterday as anyone could possibly be. I imagine Texas fans who, that was their first college football playoff experience. I guess in some ways the Huskies have had it better because they've been there twice in the college football playoff
Sure.
era. But for Texas fans, I'm sure they were like miserable. And obviously, I see a lot of Husky fan stuff on social media, and a lot of people going back and like finding tweets from angry Texas fans and reposting that and things like that, and that's fine. But everyone is going to talk a little trash about their team. That's just kind of what we do, and that is, like you said, that is what makes it fun.
Yeah.
So I'm good with it, man. I imagine next week with Michigan fans, it'll be wild too. We'll see how it goes, man. I don't really know what their fan base is like. It seems like based on where they're at in the country, they're probably big on being classy. I don't know. Midwest.
Yeah, there's a thing, there's like an upper crust traditional thing when I guess the organization has been around for 150 years or whatever that is very annoying, and I agree with you. I don't like it. I think it stinks, and yeah, I get so annoyed with all that tradition shit.
Yeah, I think it's a certain type of fan. I mean,
It's like
like,
if golf meant football, you know what I mean?
yeah. I mean, I think a lot of it is because, like, not to discount people that didn't go to the college that they support, because there's a ton of fans out there
And
that
because
did
I
not.
am one of them.
You are one of them, and I
Yeah.
don't want to insult you. Well, I kind of do,
Yeah, I know.
but people always, especially with UW, there's always the jokes about, oh, most of their fans didn't even go there, and every school has that. Man, I've been to Pullman, the whole city of Pullman. None of those people went to college. It's like you can see it. It's very evident, but they still support the team, and that's totally fine. And it's the same thing with UW and really any other school. It's like, so I feel like the class element kind of works its way in among the fans that did go to school. It's like you have like this upper crust fan
Yeah.
base, and we have to be better than the cavemen in the NFL and things like that. It's like, it's just sports, man. It's all a game. It's all
Yeah.
silly and stupid, and we're all gonna react goofy when our team does well, and probably react a little bit more unbecoming when our team doesn't. So
There's a
it's
great
just how it is.
Groucho Marx quote that is like, I would never join a club that would have me as a member. And the best thing UW ever did is not admitting me to their school. Okay. So, and the next best thing they did was winning the game last night. Rich, I'm going to go Boudet, zero
Rich
sacks.
Bidet, yes,
Bidet,
I
Bidet,
know
just
Rich
Bidet.
Bidet.
I was giving him Boudet, not Bidet. He should be a sponsor. He's like, what is it, Tushy? Is that the one of those bidet brands? Anyways, Rich Bidet. Uh, the yeah, zero sacks allowed. The Texas defensive line, or I don't remember what the whole narrative around that was, but I know that there was a lot of shit talk and bulletin board talk about the Texas pass rush versus the untested to their definition anyway.
Yeah.
Washington offensive line.
Yeah, man. I think ESPN a week or two ago was talking about how the UW offensive line would have problems. And
Hmm.
then literally like days later, they won the award for best offensive line unit in the country. So it just goes to show how much, ESPN knows at times when they're not watching Husky games. But I mean, I think this is just, the UW offensive line is obviously very good. Anyone who's watched them play this year can see that. I don't know if Texas's defensive line has looked better in other games. They certainly didn't look that good yesterday, or not that impressive, at least. Um, but it kind of is one of those things with Pac-12 football or West Coast football in general. The same thing happens in basketball every year. Like, I really don't think Pac-12 basketball is as bad every year
Right.
as people make it out to be, because Pac-12 teams get into the NCAA tournament and then just start steamrolling opponents, and it's like teams that you didn't think were any good during the regular season. I think we have because the media coverage just doesn't extend out here the way that it should, and maybe that'll change as this conference realignment happens in the next year. But it there's just so much ignorance towards the football and basketball experiences out here, and then when you finally get on that big stage and are able to prove that these teams don't suck, I think it's kind of a surprise to a lot of uh, I guess fans and media types out there that just don't watch these games.
Yeah, this was, I will say, after this game was the first time I've like truly missed the idea of the Pac-12 because it's kind of nice to be part of like the underdog. It's so much sweeter to be
Yeah.
an underdog and win than it is to be the favorite and win. And the Pac-12 was like a perennial underdog every year. And now I don't know what it's going to look like because I don't even know where they're going to be, where the Huskies are going to be situated in the Big Ten as far as like where they rank and how that'll affect. I mean, it's just going to change football so much. So I miss it, and it's kind of like I don't know. I guess it's like you moving out of the old shitty house you grew up in, and you don't miss it until you're like shit. The day I leave, you're like I kind of wish I could stay for a little bit longer. You know?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this before. Like the end of it would just be poetic if Washington wins the championship simply because they're a Pac-12 team at the end of the Pac-12, which would in some ways kind of be hilarious and also damning towards college sports. But, as a fan of a team whose chances at the playoff will, I guess, theoretically be improved in the future by being part of the Big Ten, I guess to me it's a good thing. But I do feel like I feel exactly what you just stated about the Pac-12. It's the fact that we're moving to the Big Ten, it doesn't mean there's going to be more eyes on the team necessarily. If we get put into these windows where we're playing 7 o'clock West Coast kickoffs or even 4 o'clock West Coast kickoffs, like the people on the East Coast still aren't going to watch those games.
Right.
They're supposed to be paying more attention because we're in a more prominent conference now, and we'll see if they actually do. But
Right.
I mean, whether you're I'm not so sure that the conference matters as much as just the geography and the fact that a lot of people who have a say in how college football plays out just simply don't watch a lot of West Coast games, either because of the time issue or because they
Sure.
simply don't care. I don't know, but it's tough, man. It's there's not a whole lot you can do about time zones and geography when you're part of this.
Yeah. We should move on because we're now like 2 weeks into this story and it keeps getting better. And I think that the window's closing quickly on it, much like perhaps Russell Wilson's career. Russell Wilson got benched by Sean Payton and the Denver Broncos. Russell Wilson has become a laughing stock in the last 2 years, especially in Seattle, because fans are very happy with the way the trade turned out. I think at the beginning, many fans weren't, and now they are. And now Russell Wilson is, I think everybody thought Sean Payton made like he would just revive Russell. I don't think everyone thought this the whole time. At some point, they thought if Russell Wilson teamed up with Sean Payton, he would become Drew Brees 2.0 because he's short and that for some reason is an attribute in people's minds because Drew Brees was not a super tall quarterback. He immediately clashes with Sean Payton after basically running Nathaniel Hackett out of town, gets benched, and now the Broncos are facing this enormous dead cap hit. Russell Wilson, by the way, for the first time in my memory of Russell Wilson, is like speaking in a dissenting manner about the team, actually being honest about when they approached him to change his injury guarantee. It's actually almost, to me, done like a little bit of a character renovation on Russell Wilson because I think everybody's on his side that he's getting fucked by Denver. He's actually played somewhat well this year. There's no way a reasonable person thinks Jared Stidham is a better quarterback. It's obviously for financial reasons. And I think people look at him and go like, great for standing up for yourself. It's the most, I think I saw Danny O'Neill write this. It's the most positive press he's gotten in Seattle or maybe nationwide in 2 years is this event. And go ahead.
No, I was just you finish your thought.
I mean, it seems like it's very obvious that in some way he's going to leave Denver after this season.
Yeah.
And because he has a no trade clause and no incentive to help the Broncos and no incentive to hurt the team that he goes to, he's not going to let him trade him, I don't think. So he's going to get cut and he's going to be a free agent as perhaps the most unique free agent in the history of football. I think.
It feels like Russell's career trajectory at this point is to be the quarterback of some bad teams until he retires. That's how I see it going. Like, if
Okay.
you're ready to see Russell in Atlanta or Russell in like Tampa Bay,
Sure.
get ready because I think that's what's coming next for him. I think, I mean, like you said, he has been getting some positive press here because it does feel like he's kind of getting screwed out of his contract a little bit. I mean, he's going to make a ton of money
Sure.
regardless, so you can't feel that bad for him. But it is interesting to see that he's having what appears to be the first authentic reaction of his career. And because he is reacting like a normal human being and not a robot, people are finally coming around to his side a little bit. And it's like, dude, if you would have spent, the last few years just acting like a normal human being, you'd probably have more people on your side. I mean, I feel like, when Russell was in Seattle, there were a lot of people obviously that supported him, but they supported him with the caveat that he is the quarterback of the team you love. As soon as he wasn't the quarterback of the team you love anymore, it really didn't matter what you thought of Russell Wilson. He was gone. There are obviously some Russell Wilson stands out there.
Sure.
They're typically vocal and a little weird. I don't
Much
know what.
like
Yeah, like any
much like
stand.
their hero.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I guess you see yourself in him, which is fine. Russ just seems like one of those dudes, and we've talked about it before. He just doesn't know who he is.
Sure.
And because he doesn't know who he is, it's like he's cosplaying as a normal human being. And when he does that, people see through that. And this is the first time where it's like he's upset about something. He has reason to be upset. He's reacting like an upset person. All of the things align that make sense to normal human beings. So I can understand why people would suddenly be like, all right, this dude is I guess we can relate to him in some way or another. But yeah, I mean, I think it's gonna be tough for him, man.
All right.
He's 33, right? He's getting up there.
I think he's is he 35? I thought he was 35.
Oh
Hold
man,
on.
he might be even older than I thought. Or he could be
He is
34.
35. He turned
Okay.
35
Yeah,
in
this
November.
is I mean, this is there's not it's not like he's as mobile as he once was. He did play pretty well this year, but like who wants to deal with the Russell Wilson circus?
Well,
That's
let me tell you, Alex, I have a proposal because I'm going to be the guy that's going to give you the thing that everyone says you can't talk about because it's so stupid and it's completely unrealistic and blah, blah,
you,
blah, blah, blah.
you do that a lot.
And yeah, I know I'd make a huge habit out of that. So I fully understand there's two caveats to this. If Russell Wilson was going to come back to Seattle, two major caveats. One is, does the team have any interest in him returning? Two is, does he have any interest in returning? Now, let me tell you why they might. And I guess it really to me boils down to just, no, I got a lot of time to spend on this, so you better stop fucking shaking your head. The question is really, do you think that Russell Wilson is equal or better as a quarterback than Geno Smith and Drew Lock? Because he's going to essentially cost veterans minimum next year. He's the biggest problem with quarterbacks in the NFL and with Russell Wilson in his final years in Seattle is their cap number takes up so much space. He takes up so much of the cap that it's impossible to build a good team around those guys. And time again, we hear about how hard it is to build around a franchise quarterback on a huge deal. And then you have this guy who you could basically get for free, functionally free in the NFL. I know what it's like $1.2 million to call that free. I mean, we make that. It takes a full year to make that on this podcast. So I don't want to look, but this guy is, if the egos can be set aside, and the reason I have some hope that that's possible is Bobby Wagner returned to Seattle after a horrendous departure, after a disrespectful to Bobby Wagner departure.
Yeah, do you have more? Continue. Keep making your case if you like.
So I guess to me it's pretty obvious that it may not be by a large margin, but that Russell Wilson is a slightly better quarterback than Geno Smith or Drew Lock. He comes with a ton of baggage. You disagree with that?
I disagree.
Okay.
I disagree, and here's why I disagree. I totally get where you're coming from. Like fiscally, Russell going forward makes some sense because you're not having to pay him that much as long as you're not the Denver Broncos to be your quarterback. So you can sign him up and it won't cost you a whole lot. And we've talked before about how the game in the NFL.
By the way, the Broncos are free to sign him to a minimum contract after they cut him too.
That's true.
if he'll go there.
Yeah, I mean, the game in the NFL is making sure you're not paying your quarterback so much that it prohibits you from building a good team
Yep.
around that quarterback. So, in that respect, it does make a lot of sense to have a 35-year-old Russell Wilson as your QB. But why I disagree that he's any better than Geno Smith or Drew Lock, I think where you're looking at it is through the lens of A, the past, like what he's done in the past, and B, um, the tangibles, what you see on the field. And you might be right. I mean, I think at this point, his tangibles might actually measure up pretty comparably to Geno Smith, but his intangibles are the problem. And that's where I don't think he's as good as Geno or Drew Lock or
It,
name
it's
any other
interesting though
quarterback.
because like a couple years ago, those were his strength. That was the thing that everyone pointed to.
Those were his purported strengths, but the
Sure,
reality was those weren't his strengths. And I think that's kind of come to light a little bit since he left Seattle. I mean, we've talked about all of his ex teammates that kind of bashed him,
sure,
and I think part of the reason it was easy to mitigate the personality issues he had in the locker room with his teammates and coaches and whomever is because you had some of the most outspoken people in NFL history as his teammates. You know, you had so many lightning rods in that locker room that it was easy to just kind of overlook anything Russell was doing in the corner, right?
sure.
And when he became the focal point of the team, that's when things started to regress. You know, when all of those guys in the Legion of Boom and some of those other players departed, and it was really just Russ as the face of the Seahawks, things started going downhill. And it really hasn't. I mean, we don't know what it's been like in Denver, but last year was a complete disaster. This year is very, middle of the road, and they're middle of the road with what they believe is one of the greatest coaches in NFL history, I guess. So say what you will about all of that, but I don't think his future is like I said, this is why I think his future is with some bad teams, because the teams that are going to see the financial flexibility in signing somebody like that for very cheap are going to probably be in a position where it's like you're either drafting a quarterback that's the future of your franchise and trying to make do with them on their rookie contract, or you're taking a flyer on this veteran that doesn't cost a whole lot and trying to build around him for a few years. And
Do
I
you
don't
agree
think,
with me on this? Pete
yeah,
Carroll's not going to draft and develop a quarterback.
I don't know. Pete's so different, man. He's so weird. Like he's 72, but he doesn't think he's 72.
He's done it one time since coming to the Seahawks. He was very successful, but otherwise, he's tried to have these stopgap solutions. He had Tavares Jackson, he had Matt Flynn. That he,
Yeah.
by the way, thought, and by the way, I was very much against Russell Wilson starting when he did. Like the
Yeah.
whole the handling of him at the beginning, I was very wrong, by the way. Or you think I'm right? You in your mind, it's like Mike Pence decided the Seahawks didn't win the Super Bowl, and
No, I mean, yeah, the beginning, it was tough to know what they were doing in the beginning because they
but
had just
But
brought in,
my point is, if you there's like I think you have only a couple like just biology, you only have a couple of years left with Pete Carroll, and if you could give him, this team has a lot of talent. This team has a lot of talent that fits Russell Wilson's skill set. Has a lot of talent to be a good
yeah.
defense, and we got
I
to.
don't, I don't know. I don't know if it,
This
if,
is I don't think this is right, by the way, because Kyle Taylor, he says he'll probably end up with a Jimmy G, Derek Carr level of contract and situation. I believe that every dollar he earns on his next contract, he loses that money from the Denver Broncos. I believe they can because they're going to be paying him not only bonus like prorated bonus is the
yeah,
dead cap,
I
but
don't,
also salary.
I definitely hear what you're saying. I don't think I'd focus on the contract part of that, but I think the situation part of that makes sense. He's going to be a starting quarterback for hire, basically, and like Derek Carr, like Jimmy Garoppolo, and it probably
Right.
won't. It'll probably go about the same as it's gone for those guys. And I like, first of all,
But
I
the
just think it's
Seahawks have been making those guys into playoff guys anyway.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
what I'm
but
saying.
it's a non-starter with the Seahawks because I don't
It's
think
that could be
Ron
true.
Schneider
That's
and Pete Carroll have any desire to indulge Russell Wilson.
Here's
I
what I'll
think
tell
that
you.
it was a disaster.
6 months ago I made a bet, maybe not 6 months ago, but I made a bet with some guys, and I that Russell Wilson by the end of 2025 would play for the Seahawks. I foresaw part of this happening. It seemed pretty obvious once his contract kicked in, like it was going to be tough, and if he wasn't producing, and that shit was going bad with Sean Payton. Definitely wasn't 6 months ago, by the way. I'm not that much of a seer or whatever, but I'm not that clairvoyant. But I'm telling you, don't. My opinion is don't write off the idea unless I mean I understand you have some inside information maybe that I don't have
I don't
because
think I think it's just I think it's just the reality of the
I think
relationship
you
that
would
they
have
all
said
have.
that. I think you would have said that about Bobby Wagner when he was with the
No,
Rams.
no, but
The way
like
that ended, I think it ended in a very toxic manner.
I don't think it ended in a toxic manner at all. I think the portrayal of Bobby Wagner getting cut was portrayed as being toxic, but I think it was something that both sides got over very quickly. And Bobby Wagner is like one of the best human beings you've ever employed, the Seahawks. So it's a lot different than Russell Wilson, and that's the thing. I think the people that see Russell as being just a great human being,
See,
I can understand why you would, because he's charitable or whatever, but he does it for publicity, not for charity. And that's the difference
I do
between
have
him
a
and someone
friend,
like
by the way.
Bobby Wagner.
I have
Yeah.
a friend. I guess I'm not gonna out him, but his wife has been trained as an FBI. He knows this is coming, by the
Probably
way.
shouldn't out this guy. Yes.
Has not she's not in the FBI, but she's been given FBI training on like facial tells and stuff like that. And she says that when she watches a Russell Wilson press conference, it's like he's lying and is a complete narcissist, and it's so obvious. This Mark Harris, Gino is better than Russ right now. Love what Russ did, but he's bad now. This is the deal. When Geno Smith got named the starter in Seattle, people were pissed. Nobody here has any talent evaluation ability. I'm not saying I do either. I'm saying
but
Russ. We've
this is
seen
you
it in
do
this
this
system
though.
a couple years ago.
You do this thing, and I
I'm
get it.
excited. I'm excited.
No, you do this thing because you're super analytical or whatever about sports. I get that.
Oh God, is this
But
if this is supposed to be some sort of fucking
no. You
revolution against analytics, I'm gonna be pissed.
No, because I can see why you're making the case for us, for the Seahawks or any other team really, because it's fiscally responsible, and we know that wins championships in the NFL. So I totally get the case you're making.
I actually don't. I don't know that it's a good move for like Atlanta or somebody like that. I think he's a guy that could come here, play 2 years, and he and Pete Carroll ride off into the sunset, reunited.
That's never gonna happen.
Okay. Give me odds and then let's bet money on it?
Okay, I'll give you what's a good number that I would be comfortable with. I'll give you like 20-1. That's
20-1. How much would you be willing to put up at 20-1? $10? Is that fair? That's $200. That's not that.
Yeah, that's good.
Are we doing something illegal on this podcast right now? I don't know. Okay, we can move on from the topic as long as I can make $200 off of this. Then I'm happy with it.
What are the terms? Is that he becomes the Seahawks quarterback this coming season, next season?
I say before the end of 2025.
I feel like it's got to be next year.
No, what are you scared?
No,
before the end.
Anything could happen. Because here's the thing: next year, let's say Pete and John get fired or whatever, or they both quit. Then that changes the dynamic entirely.
Mike Hansen says, let's go young, Penix, Fields, something like that. By the way, I fully agree on Justin Fields. I love Justin Fields. I saw people suggesting the Seahawks trade a mid-round pick for Justin Fields. Everyone's like, no, you don't need it, blah, blah, blah. Hold on, I gotta take a pause real quick and go, I gotta text my wife. She's having a problem with her car right now.
Well, let me talk about Justin Fields really quick. I think there's no way that Justin Fields I don't think Chicago's letting him leave. I think they understand, like, the times that he's been bad in Chicago, there's been a lot of other stuff going on around him. Players have been injured. Not been.
You don't think they're taking Caleb Williams? Or you think they're trading out of that pick?
I don't know. I think they'll.
Are you that checked out of the draft? You're not a draft guy.
No, I just think that they'd be foolish to let Fields go. It's like if you think Caleb Williams is the answer, then you already have that in Fields, basically. And he's proven himself in the NFL to some degree. But, I mean, if Justin Fields becomes available, I think every team in the league that needs a quarterback will be interested in him, especially if it doesn't cost that much in a trade. I mean, a mid-round pick for a franchise quarterback is,
Josh Smith says Fields is costing more than a mid-round pick.
I would think
I agree that he's worth more than a mid-round pick, but I don't know that it's for sure that he's going to cost more. But that's fully up to the market. Obviously,
it's totally market-driven. If the word gets around that Chicago's out on him and they're drafting a quarterback, then he probably only does cost a mid-round pick because all your leverage is gone at that point. You don't have any leverage. You're not going to keep him. So, if that becomes the case, then certainly. But I think the reality.
The nice thing about drafting Michael Penix is he's not that young, so it's good. He graduated the same year as me, so that's
somebody
good.
Posts that he's a day older than Trey Lance. So.
Oh wow, that's great.
Yeah, but that's going to be that's the future of the NFL at the quarterback position, especially with NIL.
I mean, that was Russ's deal too. By the way, he was like a fifth year and had been like a 5-year starter or chunks of 5 years
Joe Burrow a couple
starting.
years ago is another
Sure.
example of a guy who was on the older side. And it's like,
I think Burrow only had 1 year starting though. I think that's a big,
yeah, with
big
with
deal.
NIL though, you'll have guys who are sticking around in college longer than they have in the past. I think running backs will still go early because there's such a premium on youth and age at the running back position. But for
Sure.
quarterbacks, especially, like you're going to make so much money in NIL. A lot of these guys are going to make more in NIL than they would as a draft pick. So just stick around for another year, make your
Yeah.
money, and then see what happens.
Josh Smith, give me odds on the mid-round pick, and then let's gamble. I'm in a gambling mood. I think I'm going to the EQC Sportsbook this weekend. By the way, maybe I don't know. I think my wife might throw me out of the house if I'm doing that and comedy in the same weekend. But anyway, okay. I want to tell you about on New Year's Eve. I went to the Seahawks game, and I sat in a suite.
Yeah, how'd you
Not-
end up in a suite? So you've been to like 2 games in the past couple weeks.
like the last 2 home games, maybe, or
You hadn't gone in years, right? That was the deal. You hadn't gone in years.
Ooh, hold on, Josh Smith. We got the odds are 10-1. That's 10 whiskeys. Okay, I'll take 10-1 odds. I'll buy you a whiskey, Josh Smith. If I assume I'm on the 10 side of this because you're so certain. So you're gonna buy. By the way, if Josh Smith's buying me 10 whiskeys, he's taking me home. That's a rough night, and I don't mean to my home. By the way,
He didn't offer up the Uber at the same time. He just offered up. It's your responsibility.
So yeah, I the first one I got tickets because my mom got them as like a gift, and so she brought me. And then these ones, my friend owns a restaurant, we'll say, and which is like that is true. It is a restaurant, and he one of his vendors has a suite, and so we got to go there. I got the pretty good hookup, and it was great. I will say every time I go to a game, I think I should do this more often. I should get season tickets. I started pricing season tickets. And then the drive there and like the hassle to get in and then the hassle to get out and what is a 3-hour experience at home becomes a 7 or 8 hour experience to see it. You can't watch the early games. You miss most of the late games. Like it's a hassle. And because of that, like I don't know. This is why I don't go to a lot of games, is because it's like it is a huge hassle.
Yeah, I used to go to a ton of Seahawks games, and I totally get it, man. It's a full day event pretty much, and you're gonna be tired the next day.
Yeah,
a lot of so I totally understand why people wouldn't go, and I respect people that do. I mean, that's kind of the case with any sporting event, but especially with football. Football is so much more of a time suck than any other sport that you'll go see. So yeah, I get it. But you're in the suite, so it's worth it.
So the suite though, yeah, the suite makes it. The suite takes away some of the worst things. It's warmer. You have your own private bathroom. This vendor I had like 9 Bodhisattvas. Don't tell my wife. I think we lied and said I had 5 or 4 when we got home. I believe I had 9 Bodhisattvas and a Stella Artois. Maybe I had 7 Bodhisattvas, a Stella Artois. I had a kokanee in this mix, dude. Jesus, I was going nuts. But it's all free. I had
Did you feel like Taylor Swift for a minute, just being up in the suite in an NFL game, just like she's been all season?
I was blowing kisses to tight ends all over the place, dude. And I'm not talking about the football players. No, I was.
You just work that into your act.
It's got to be 1990 for me to work that into my act, I think. No, it really does spoil you because you're like, everything is just so much nicer. And I'm looking at these people because I'm sitting right next to the window, and these fucking scum are walking by to go to their shitty seats, and I'm like, you piles of shit. The fact that you and I could have shared the same bathroom, I can't believe it. Have you ever sat in a suite anywhere?
I have at Mariner games. I've been a couple times to a suite at a Mariner game. I don't think I've done it at any kind of football game. So yeah, it's strictly been baseball, which is a different crowd. But even when I've done it at the baseball game, you definitely feel like you're elite.
Yes.
You are truly elite.
I will say I think that the gap between non-suite seats and suite seats, the gap is the largest in football. I've been in a baseball suite also, and it's not even better in my opinion. I love the bleachers, dude. I love sitting in the bleachers. It's a better view of the game. It's I love everything about the bleachers. To me, the anything down the lines, unless you're like trying to get a ball, that's the only benefit is garbage compared to being in the bleachers. And all those suites are high up, and it's a bad view. You got to watch the game on TV to enjoy it. Suite at a football game,
Football is like, hey, during football season, you're always going to have the elements, and the weather
yeah,
is going to be worse. Baseball season, for the most part, good weather.
sure.
But football season, man, if you can get out of the cold, get away from the rain, that makes it all worthwhile. Whoever had the idea for suites is a real son of a bitch. I mean, good idea, but you really excluded a lot of people. So you're kind of
The other thing I did, by the way, I looked up because yeah, they take up a lot of space, and I was like, how much would it cost for some friends and I to like throw in on a suite? They're like 16 uh 16 seats, I think, and then maybe you could fit a couple other people in them. I don't know what the rules are. 5 or 6 parking passes. I've done this research recently, so what do you think
well,
the minimum price of a Seahawks suite is?
how many people does it hold?
I think it's 16.
16. Let's be honest, that's junior hockey. That's 16-year-olds
Yes.
out there. I've priced out a suite
You got a
for
lot of
that.
leg room in most of those games. A lot of room to move around in most of those games.
Yeah, I've priced out a suite for that, and it was discouraging. So if that's discouraging, I mean, at the pro level, I mean, come on, man, much worse.
Um, yeah. So, anyways, we're there for this Pittsburgh Steelers game. I will say, 2 brave Steelers fans made their way into the suite, and that's a
Wow.
tough place to be because you've isolated yourself. If you're a Steelers fan, I actually sat almost directly behind where I was at the Eagles game, where it was. There were, by the way, the two Pennsylvania teams. That's what I'm there to see. Is I want to see
Yeah,
Pennsylvania
you
take a
see all
beat
the
down.
Pennsylvania teams apparently.
Yeah. But I was directly behind it, and that side of the field, obviously, I think I think it's obvious that there's more. Both times there were more opposing teams fans over there, but it is like we were looking down on the club level, and there's just a lot of Steelers fans there. There were a lot of Eagles
Oh yeah,
fans there,
yeah.
and it's in that setting, you have like a lot of allies around you. But in a suite, you have like 14 people who all like the Seahawks to some degree. I would suspect there was a couple people in there that were like really big fans, and most of the people were like, we had like a very annoying child, like a 15-year-old behind us. That's only annoying because he's young. There's nothing about him in particular that was annoying, but he's just like,
The sweet crowd in general at any sporting event is subdued. It's always going to
yes.
be subdued because it's like it's usually through some work event. So it's like half the people there don't even really care. They're just there because it's a suite or because they're getting dragged to this thing. So it's always going to be subdued.
But it's still brave to go to that game, and it's all like because of the nature of the vendor, it's like all restaurant owners or employees or friends or whatever. These aren't like the folks that are coming into this suite are not the upper crust of society that you might expect in a Taylor Swift suite. This guy's like me. They're the guy like me in this suite, so you know it can't be that good. The crowd anyway. The suite's amazing, by the way. I don't want to complain about the suite at all.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I thought that was brave. And then the Seahawks. I mean, I'll tell you, I was watching the game through a little bit of an IPA haze, so it was
Sounds
frustrating to
like it.
watch. They they got run. By the way, I normally don't mix alcohol and sports very much, and then boy, that I'll have like a beer or two at the most, and then yeah, they make them free, and it's so hard not to just take. I'm just
It's true because
cheaper than I am.
clearly you are a fiscally motivated person after that whole Russell Wilson conversation. So when you start doing the math on how much a beer at a stadium would cost you, and then reason that it's free, then it's like, well, I'm saving like $150 here. I might as well indulge. I get
Yes,
it. I understand.
yeah. So from my perspective, it looked like the defense got run all over. I didn't think that the offense played particularly badly, but the defense got run all over. There were big plays here and there, but I mean that defense is a problem. I guess if you had a really inexpensive quarterback, you could probably afford to pay a couple defenders. I don't know. I don't know if that's an opinion that anyone else
That's the
shares,
thing.
but
They've paid the defense. They have good players on defense, and they just didn't play well. I don't know, man. Um, yeah, they look like the Seahawks look like shit against the Steelers, who are not a good team, especially with a backup quarterback, technically like a third string quarterback, and Mason Rudolph running the team. I know he's started games in the past, but he's basically a third stringer.
Sure.
and it didn't look good. And Najee Harris looked like he did as a rookie. Remember when Najee Harris was a rookie and everyone thought he was going to be like the next great running back? And then ever since then, he's been terrible, just terrible. Like every fantasy league I'm in, someone's still holding on to Najee Harris, hoping he will be a great back like he was as a rookie. And against the Seahawks, he was. It was a vintage Najee Harris performance.
Who's the other dude that they have though? Oh my god, what is his name? James something maybe.
Jalen
Uh,
Warren, the other running back.
Yeah, Jalen Warren.
Yeah.
He looked like Najee Harris. Like there was no difference. There was no drop off.
Warren's been good. Warren's
Sure.
actually been good at times, but
They
Najee's
they
been terrible,
all
and
looked like
they both carved up the Seahawks. It was
Can I
disappointing.
the what was the dude's name? The Charlie. What was the Charlie dude's name that played for the
Quarterback? Quarterback?
no, you're thinking of Charlie Batch.
Yeah, I was.
No, Willie Parker, fast Willie Parker.
Oh,
One
yeah.
of my favorite ever interviews is Willie Parker. They go, he goes, yeah, they call me Fast Willie Parker. They go, why do they call you Fast Willie Parker? He goes, because I'm fast. Like what a great, what a great answer.
That's why you just nickname people based on their attributes. It's
Yeah,
so much easier that way.
Yeah, tall. I'm fat Casey. You're half Asian Alex. I don't know what the characteristics I'm allowed to even talk about.
The next show you do, just have them introduce you as Fat Casey. I bet you the crowd will laugh their ass off.
Yeah, that's fucked up with that crowd.
Okay, did you throw a drink at anybody from your suite? Because I hear that's what people do now.
No, I didn't. I should have. That's what I learned is the appropriate behavior. I'm trying to get this stupid window to share. These are the technical difficulties that you could be missing out on if you're not watching on video.
A video of the Panthers owner throwing his drink. I didn't actually see the video. I just heard that he did it.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to make this so you can hear the audio. Could you hear the audio earlier?
Yes, I could. Yes.
Oh, I guess I couldn't. That's annoying.
Oh, I could hear it. It was just a lot of yelling, though. It was, incoherent yelling. Oh, did you see during the game yesterday when the fan on Bourbon Street flashed a boob?
I did see that. That was fantastic. Yeah. It was one of the best parts of being at the Sugar Bowl instead of the Rose Bowl.
ESPN apologized for that today. I don't know. You don't need to apologize for that.
I believe that.
Okay, let's
see
this video.
I want to tell you because you can see this video now, right?
I can see it. Yes.
Okay, so what
I want to see his throwing form. He might be a better quarterback than Bryce Young.
It's going to be a little disappointing because you don't get to see like the full motion, the full windup. You kind of just see the velocity out of his hand. But I want to tell you a thing because I learned this going to a suite at the Seahawks game. There are two levels of suites at the Seahawks game. There is what they call the club suites and then like the real suites where you're like, I saw journalist and a guy who shared a wedding party with me, Mike Dugar. You know Michael Sean Dugar?
I do. I used to play basketball with him.
Okay, so I saw him walking in, and then once we got up to the point where he walked in, they go, nah, you guys go downstairs. What the fuck do you think you're doing here? So I wasn't a suite, but I was in a lower suite. But what is interesting to me is that the owner of the Panthers is in a suite where a fan, you'll see this. Hold on, let's just play it. I assume you can hear.
No, I can't hear anything now.
Oh my god!
That's
shit!
Okay. Just
hold on.
Okay, here we go. No, still nothing. But it
Jesus Christ.
So
anyway, the point is
can you play it one more time? I gotta see this. I gotta see it again. It really needs to be like in slow mo. So I know that's him in the gray.
Yeah, it's him on the right in the gray. But so what I am surprised about in this video is that the Panther. By the way, what's frustrating is on neither of these could I hear him, which is very frustrating, and it really lives up to the tech challenges that we have. But
the audio was irrelevant. The throw was not great either.
That's right. But he's very exposed because literally in one of the videos you see a guy like climb up onto and like start yelling at him in the suite. I thought he was going to be like a full level above this guy throwing shit out at somebody. He's feet away. That guy could have climbed into the suite and beat his ass.
Yeah, this game was in Jacksonville, correct? Wasn't that the deal? So he's on the road, I assume.
Oh, there we go.
I don't think it was in Carolina.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, so they put him in a low-level suite, in a dog shit suite.
It's not that's not what I was thinking. But yeah, you're right. It probably is a lesser suite. But Jacksonville is just an older stadium, so it's probably like, the '90s stadium suites are a lot different than today's suites, I think. And yeah, clearly he was exposed enough to be able to throw that drink. He didn't have to throw it very far, but man, that guy is. I mean, he's a train wreck. The Panthers are a train wreck in general, but the story out of Carolina is that their owner, David Tepper, the guy who throws the drink, he overruled his GM on the quarterback draft. You know, he was the one that he wanted. They could have drafted CJ Stroud. Instead, he
Yep.
takes Bryce Young. Bryce Young's been pretty much a disaster all year. And now he's living in it. He fired everybody else, and he's the one who's gonna have to live in this bed he made, and now it just gets worse for the poor Panthers. I actually have I feel like I kind of have a soft spot for the Panthers. I've been to 2 games in Carolina and
God,
not
you won't
bad.
stop bragging about it.
I like their stadium. Their mascot's cool, Sir Purr. I love
That.
Sir
I
Purr.
hate that name
It's
so
a
much.
great name. It's
No,
so
it
much
stinks.
like Blitz is like a very generic name for a mascot. It has nothing to do with being a bird. It's just Blitz, right? But Sir Purr is funny. They call their dancers the top cats. I don't know. They keep it all on brand.
Okay,
Everything is
Top
cat
Cats doesn't touch Seagulls, for the record. Seagulls is way better than Top Cats.
Yeah, Seagulls is probably better because it sticks with the theme. But the fact that they keep everything aligned on brand in Carolina, that says something. They keep it all cat themed. In Seattle, they're like, here's Blitz. It has
Well,
nothing
maybe
to do with
do you
it.
think maybe then the owner was just knocking a drink off of the table like a cat? Do you think that's what was going on?
Possible that's what he was doing. This guy is just because he's only been the owner of the team for a couple years, and it just
Sure.
hasn't gone well for him. But it's not like the Panthers have much legacy anyway. I mean, their best years were with Jake Delhomme, so that was a while back.
Yeah. They had a couple good years with Cam Newton, as I recall.
They were okay. Yeah, they were
I
really.
believe they went to a Super Bowl. I don't know if that's right, but
they didn't win anything. Though. They didn't win a Super Bowl. They just made the Seahawks' lives miserable for a few years there. They were just constantly were destroying the Seahawks. And even still, I don't mind the Panthers that much. So I hope things get better. Good luck, Carolina fans. It doesn't look good for you.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice to not have a team that has an embarrassing owner. I don't think that have any Seattle teams ever really had like a super publicly embarrassing owner. I know some of the stories that came out about Howard Schultz were pretty embarrassing in retrospect, but I don't know that there's anything that was like publicly super. No Jim Irsay, no Jerry Jones.
No one's been like a clown show. It's like we've had a lot of bad owners in Seattle. Like, I mean, there was like a run of owners that tried to sell and move our teams. It's like Ken Behring tried to move the Seahawks. He literally drove him down to California, and then found out he couldn't do that. And then Paul Allen rescued the team. And then the Mariners had Jeff Smolian first, who tried to move the team to Tampa. Couldn't do that, so Nintendo bought it. You can say what you want about Nintendo, whether you thought they were good or not. And now you can say what you want about John Stanton. They've had all these bad owners. Yeah. But no one's been just a complete unmitigated disaster. Maybe that's the next step for us. We need somebody who's not only willing to make the franchise bad, but also embarrass themselves in the process. That's what's next for us.
Oh, wow. This is an interesting book idea, by the way. Jared Judnick, The Dirt You Could Write.
I would never write that because it would out too many people I like. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Maybe when they're all dead and I'm very old, that's the thing. When you
watch out, Curtis Crabtree. The day we're all counting down till you die. That's not true. I don't even know you at all.
Old sports writers, they just have nothing. They just write books. That's what they do. You get done with sports writing, it's like you have nothing else to talk about. Just write a book, a memoir. Howard Schultz made an ass of himself. I don't know.
I don't remember him making. I mean, I think he's like been somewhat embarrassing since he was an owner, but I don't remember him being. And like he was definitely, I think, alienated players by trying to be their friend and he like wanted to treat them like employees and also his buddies. Like he had a lot of problems with that.
Michael Scott.
But we found out about that stuff after he left Seattle, or after the team left Seattle, more accurately, not while he was here.
I mean, the worst example, it wasn't technically an owner, but Kevin Mather obviously was very bad. He wasn't the best. Yeah. He had a lot of transgressions, obviously one that stood out from above the rest, but it's always that type of thing. Once you step in the mud and get in trouble, then everybody piles on with all the stories of how reprehensible your behavior is at all times. And it's like Dan Snyder when he was in Washington, it was like the stories would just pile on, and eventually you just can't get out from underneath that. And rightfully so. I mean, if someone is that shitty, We should out them for sure.
Yeah, it reminds me. Remember when Marvin Harrison got outed as a murderer, and then we were like, "Oh, he also was mean to a towel boy." You're like, "Oh, well, I think that you might have buried the lead on that. I don't think that's as big of a story anymore. He could have done
Turns
that
out
while
he's
he was
not that
playing."
nice. Yeah, the murderer thing. I mean, he just kind of got away with it, right? Like that's. I
Yes.
don't really. I haven't dug into that story in a long time, but I make jokes about it all the time still, just like for fun. Especially with Marvin Harrison Jr. being in the spotlight now, it's like
Yeah.
there's a lot of jokes to be made about Marvin Harrison Sr. Ray Lewis got away with it too, man. I don't know how did
Something
these
about being a
NFL guys.
football player. There's another fella named O.J. Simpson. I'm not sure if you're
Oh, I don't
familiar
know
with.
him. He must be before my time.
Orange Julius.
OJ, at least to OJ's credit, he at least laid a ton of groundwork as being like a really good spokesperson, an actor. He was just a dude that like he did everything he could to make himself likable so that people would not see how much of a monster he was behind the scenes. Marvin Harrison and Ray Lewis, they didn't do a whole lot of that,
Well,
laying that
Marvin
groundwork.
Harrison felt like the kind of guy that was just like a lunch pail, show up, work harder than everyone, crisp routes. He
Those
was,
guys are always the killers. Every time you hear about killers, it's always the guy who's like, oh yeah, he just kind of kept to himself. Best neighbor I ever had. He never caused me any
by the
trouble.
way, you think I didn't know it was Orenthal James? You thought this is Matt Mikolas here. You thought I thought it was actually Orange Julius Simpson? Give me a break.
That's a better name. I like Orange. All right, we've exhausted these times. Do we even need to talk about the Seahawks playoff chances? They're not that
I don't
great.
know. They're probably not going to make the playoffs. It's going to require some help, and when the Seahawks need help, they actually I will say in the last 10 years, I feel like the first 27 years. I was trying to remember how old I am.
Yeah.
First 27 years of me being a sports fan, it was like exclusively bad luck, and the scars have not gone away. Yesterday, watching the Huskies, I was so sure they were going to get fucked by that clock stoppage thing, and people were already celebrating, and I was like, this is not over by a long shot. And I feel like it's been a decade of pretty good luck, so it would not surprise me if somehow the Seahawks sneak in. It also wouldn't surprise me if everything happens for them to enter the playoffs and they lose to Arizona nonetheless.
There's a couple things that are working against them. One, they go to Arizona, which they just never play well in Arizona. It doesn't matter how bad the Cardinals are. The stadium down there is not good to the Seahawks.
Yeah.
So that's a problem. You need the Packers to lose to the Bears, which is very possible, especially if Justin Fields played like he did last week. They could very easily that's more or less a pick 'em
Justin
right
Fields
now.
playing for a job potentially, and they're not worried about draft picks there because
The
they
problem,
have the first pick because of Carolina.
yeah,
Because
the
your
problem
Carolina
is
Panthers.
the game is in Green Bay. That's always a tough place to play. But Green Bay is only favored by 3 points right now, which basically it means it's a pick 'em. So could go either way. We'll see what happens. I don't know, man. I'm of the opinion that it's great if the Seahawks get in the playoffs. But I know there are people out there that are like, no, I want them to lose every game and just perennially have draft picks. And
yeah, but I think the problem with that from a Seahawks fan's perspective, and where I'm going to agree with you, is they don't draft the chalk anyway. So it doesn't matter. If they get the 20th pick or the 30th pick, they're probably picking the 45th best prospect on everyone else's board. So who gives a shit? It doesn't matter at all. And I got one more question that I'm going to pull up, and I should not reward this type of behavior, but I'm in a debate in my fantasy league, which everyone else cares about a lot. I'm in a fantasy league with Matt Mikolas, and we have a debate going on. It's a dynasty league. And we have kickers. Earlier, he asked, why should kickers be in dynasty leagues? He's got this obsession with getting rid of kickers in our league. And my argument is simply kickers are football players. They score like maybe the most or second most points of any player on a team, typically. A player that scores the most points on a team probably should be on a fantasy football team. What are your feelings, Alex?
I'm in leagues where we have kickers, and I'm in leagues where we don't. I once advocated for punters in the fantasy football league.
Then you're not even qualified to answer this question.
So obviously I'm going to side with the kicker because I feel like I find good enough kickers and they always get me enough points where it matters. I've never been like totally railroaded by somebody else's kicker, so maybe that's why I don't feel super bad about it.
So this is a great question to close it out, I think. Jared Judnick. By the way, Jared, if I'm pronouncing that wrong, I'm sorry. Are you guys on the Fire Pete bandwagon? And I'm going to give you the only scenario where I want Pete fired is if the only way to keep Kalen DeBoer in Seattle is to let him coach both the Seattle Seahawks and the Washington Huskies and also keep Ryan Grubb in Seattle, that's the only way that I want to fire Pete in the next 2 years. I think when he leaves, there's going to be a massive rebuild. It's going to be a complete tear down and build back up. And I don't necessarily want that to start right now. I don't know that this team has a Super Bowl in it with the construction it has right now, with the quarterback they have right now. I do think quarterback play is important, unlike some people on this podcast. I think that it's really good to have a good quarterback for cheap. Um, and but I think you just let him ride it out, because here's the deal. It's your, like, literally, I think when he goes, it probably spells the end of DK Metcalf's time here. I don't know what Jackson Smith and Jigba's time is going to look like here if there's not a great quarterback. I mean, these guys could all be gone before there's another good Seahawks team. So I think they have a very talented roster. And I don't want to start over with, and even like, I don't even know what the scenario would be. Like if like Kyle Shanahan or somebody, Mike McDaniel, somebody that I really respect as a coach, became available, maybe I would think that would be a time to do it. But I think I think that people, myself included, by the way, I used to be a Fire Pete guy. I've been very impressed with how he has made the quarterback position somewhat fungible, which is like very hard to do in the NFL. I do think that. I'm not a Fire Pete guy anymore. Let him have his last couple of years. I mean, I don't know. 3 years from now, if they're still sitting around 500 every year, I think I'm a Fire Pete guy, but not right now.
Yeah, I've never been on the Fire Pete bandwagon, really. I mean, it's the thing about, like you were saying, I mean, here it's the closest thing to running a college program in the NFL. So if you do get rid of Pete, that probably means the end of John Schneider too, unless Pete just retires. Pete just retires on his own accord. I mean, he's the one who's in charge. So the only one who can fire him is Jody Allen. So if he goes, John Schneider probably goes. And, for years it's been rumored that the only place he would go would be Green Bay, because that's where he kind of got his start. And who knows? He's pretty entrenched.
Schneider, that now. Is.
Schneider's pretty entrenched here now. So maybe that wouldn't be the case anymore. But yeah, it'd be a complete overhaul. It'd be like when the Cowboys got rid of Tom Landry and brought in, Jimmy Johnson, Jerry Jones, which that obviously worked out well for them. So sure. maybe there's a case to be made there. But
yeah, I mean, I guess, like, to me, the only way you kind of ride the wave into another generation of good Seahawks football is to go like Clint Hurt or Shane Waldron into that spot, like kind of carry the culture forward a little bit. But I don't even know if those, I mean, I don't know if,
I would just say that the rumor has been Dan Quinn would come here and take over. He's kind of like in some ways, a coach in waiting, even though he's not with the team right now, sure. Which I don't think that's going to happen, because it seems like he'll get a head coaching job before that. But obviously, I think if the job opened up here, he'd probably be interested in it, because he's been here before and made it work here.
And he's not a head coach right now.
And he's not a head coach at the moment. So, it's always possible. But it seems like, it's you can't really replicate the culture Pete Carroll has built in Seattle. It's hard to do. It's, like I said, it is very much like a college environment. And to try and do that and just carry that over with guys that have maybe been here briefly in the past, that would even be tough to do. So I think when the time does come, it's a complete overhaul. And I understand when people are like, I advocate for Mike Hopkins getting fired as the UW basketball coach all the freaking time. And I understand that means a complete overhaul and you lose your recruits and all of that sort of thing. And you don't have to worry about that with the NFL, because obviously contracts are involved. But, what Pete does very well is he gets players to buy in, believe, and play for him. And that's not always the easiest thing to do in pro sports. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what that landscape looks like when the time does come for him to go, but I don't think it's right now.
Yeah. I think he gets to leave under his own power. And also, Jared Judnick, thank you for letting me know that I'm pronouncing your name correctly. I'm pretty good at pronouncing names. This was a tough one, and I really fought through it. And, yeah, I think that's the end of the podcast.
That's good. If you actually listened to this point, which thank you, first of
all. There's a very few people listening at this point. We were hot at the beginning, and then it really dwindled.
But when baseball season comes around, we will bring back the home run game to this part of the podcast, and that's where things really go wild. So
yeah, this is where you can give the answers away to me, so I have a fucking fighting chance.
That could happen, and I don't feel good about that.
All right. I'm going to try to do some radio production right now to end this, but thank you guys for listening. Follow me at at Casey McLean Comedy. Alex is at Alex SSN. Wait, we got one more comment before we Pete Jared Judnick, who's quickly becoming my favorite listener of this podcast. Pete is the architect, of course, just of the most prosperous era in Seattle sports, and he gets that latitude. All right, I regret reading it. Bye, everybody. You're gonna tell him bye or no? You just leave him hanging.
Bye, guys. Thank you.